This is the Buwwy Breakdown recorded Monday, June 20th, 2022, and today I'm going to be giving a review of Lightyear. Okay, hello everybody. This is a little different. I don't usually do these. I do these episodes, but I don't usually do this type of episode. So how many have I done? I think I've done 5 of these, or 4 or 5 of these. I think this is episode 5 of the Buwwy Breakdown. I'm going to check really quick just to make sure I've got that. Yes, it's episode 5. The last one was about E3. Yesterday, I went to go see the film Lightyear. And I had a lot of interesting thoughts about this film for a few reasons. First of all, anytime you see a Pixar movie, it's always a big deal. I think there's 26 Pixar films. And they're all of massive quality. I mean, I looked it up yesterday, and there is not a single movie below that's rotten, a single Pixar movie that's rotten other than Cars 2. And then I think the only lowest one near that is Cars 3, which is like still fresh, 69%, both critics and audience score. And then I believe Cars is the next lowest. It's 74. I don't know. These aren't, I'm looking at it right now. These aren't rated from top to bottom. I'm looking down. And then it's Good Dinosaur. So pretty much all the movies that people expect to be low on the list. I mean, even something like Onward, which is generally a pretty meh Pixar film. I think most people would say it was relatively forgettable. A nice story, but relatively forgettable is 88%. This film, Lightyear, is 76% critic score, 86 audience score, which is interesting to me, because from what I can tell, the audience didn't hate Lightyear. I mean, but the critics seem to, and I'm kind of cut in the middle of this. I really didn't like the film. I think there's a lot of issues with the film. I think the first issue is the fact that they made it, about Buzz Lightyear. I was watching Dan Murrell's review, a great YouTuber, and he said something about, I think it was Dan Murrell, it might have been somebody else, but hopefully I credit the right person. They said this film felt like a space movie, just a generic Pixar space movie, but somebody saw the script and said, hey, we have this space character, let's just change up some of the names. Let's just change Buzz to, or whoever it was, to Buzz Lightyear, and also the villain to Zurg, or Future Buzz, which I'll get to. By the way, this is spoilers. I'll put that in the title, so hopefully you came in knowing that. But in terms of recent Pixar films, just to give you a little background, because I feel like when I'm starting out reviewing movies, which I'm going to start doing more because movies are something that I really enjoy, I want to give you a perspective on what my previous opinions on these types of films are, so I kind of have a background with you, so you kind of can see where I'm coming from. So like in terms of Pixar, my favorite Pixar movie, it depends. It kind of changes on the day, but I think recently I just rewatched Wall-E a few weeks ago, and I teared my eyes out. I know, pathetic, but I teared my eyes out at the last during the last 10 minutes of the film. It's a gorgeous film. I love the fact that they did most of it without any serious dialogue. That was fantastic. I absolutely love that. Ratatouille's up there, Incredible's up there. Haven't seen Finding Nemo for a while. Really want to watch that. Monsters Inc., Toy Story, all of those movies. And in terms of recent Pixar films, I know those are from, at this point, 15 to 20 years ago. I really enjoyed Turning Red. I thought that was one of the better Pixar movies to come out in the last 6-7 years. It was just, I like when Pixar movies do something like that, because that story is not applicable to everyone. I remember it got a lot of shit for that. It's like, well, if you're not a Chinese girl who grew up during the early 2000s, it's not going to mean anything to you. But that's not necessarily true. And even somebody like me, who's not even a woman. I mean, it's clearly about puberty and periods and whatnot. And even someone like me who is not a woman, hasn't experienced a period, there's still something for me here. It's still a fun movie, and it gives you more perspective. That's the thing about films that I wish more people understood, or not understood, but embraced, is that films are meant to, some of them are meant to, show you a different side of culture and a different perspective than yours, and maybe inform your perspective, or you you disagree with the perspective, but you still appreciate the art for that because someone has that. You don't disrespect the art because of that. That's just my opinion, but I think that's the beautiful thing about film. Like, my guilty pleasure Pixar movie is like Monsters University. I love that movie. It's just fun. I recently watched Coco, adored that movie. Incredibles 2 was okay, not as great as the first Incredibles. Anyways, I'm just gonna stop going, but in terms of recent Pixar movies, like Turning Red, Luca, I thought was mid. I thought it was okay. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. Soul was like right in the middle of those two. So that's my, in terms of recent Pixar films, how I'd look at them. I can get more into depth in the future, but anyways, let's just get into Lightyear. It's already been like 5 minutes. I feel like people are waiting for that. Or not. So this film starts out really good. The thing I really loved, I loved the first third of this movie, because the first third of this movie kind of struggled with the most interesting aspect of the film. Not struggled in the way that the filmmakers struggled making it, but the character of Buzz. So just a brief synopsis of the beginning there. They get stranded on this planet. They're space rangers, which is kind of akin to Star Trek. Star Trek, the Enterprise. How they their goal is to kind of explore new planets and fight off threats and whatnot. Which is great. I love that kind of stuff. But anyways, danger befuddles them, and eventually their ship that they need to get back, called the Turnip, doesn't have like the fuel it needs or something, because whatever, I don't remember exactly, but it just is not able to leave. So they flash forward, which is interesting. They do like this very quick montage. Said, well, a year later, blah 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 blah. A year later, they flash forward. They've built like a little civilization because they had a lot of scientists in hypersleep in the Turnip or whatever. And then they end up finding this way that they need to do this thing in hyperspace. They need to find a way to get to hyperspace to go back. Find a way to get the Turnip to go to hyperspace. So Buzz flies this mission with this special fuel that's supposed to get him into hyperspace, and he does it. He has to like orbit around or catapult around the sun, I believe, and then go and hit these rings. Anyway, so this happens, and there's some tension in it because, Buzz thinks he's gonna, he's not gonna make it, but he does some quick math and shit, and then blows up into the thing, into the rings. But, so the test ends up failing. However, he finds an interesting thing that he fast forward like 4 years into the future. And everyone's just a little more grown up. And this is a very interesting premise to me, because I love the idea of Buzz being that same age and everyone else aging around him for the rest of the movie. I think that would have been an interesting thing to explore. When I was driving home, I was like, I love that first third, but they kind of just put all this in the beginning. I would have loved to explore it more, but let me talk quickly. And so he keeps going. He keeps doing this mission. They do it essentially in a montage. And the main person in this montage that Buzz's life revolves around is this Hawthorne, this Agent Hawthorne or whatever, Captain Haw, whatever her title is. And as Buzz goes around into keeps doing these hyperspace missions, they keep aging. Eventually, until and we see that through this montage, this Hawthorne, Buzz coming back, and Hawthorne, growing up quickly. It's like, oh, you're engaged, and she's like, yeah. And then we see her wife, and then we see her her age with the wife, and then we see her kid, and then we see her kid graduate, and then we see her kid have another kid, and then we see the grandkid, and by the time the grandkid's like, 8 or 9, she's dying. She sends the last message to Buzz, and that's the end of the thing. And then this new guy comes in who is not a big fan, who abandoned the hyperspace mission because he developed this shield that they can just put around the base and they can just live there. So I think that first part of the film is very interesting. I really liked that idea. I think the concept of Buzz aging, not at all, and these people aging is something that they could have explored more. I don't know how they would have done it in the whole film and made it still really entertaining to kids while also settling just on this one planet for the entire time and not having necessarily a main villain. I think the guy who abandoned the mission could have been a decent villain, and we could have had a little bit of sociological kind of ethical questions about, is this the best for the people? Because, despite Buzz's mistakes, he's allowed these people to still have lives. I mean, it's similar to Up in that sense. It could have been similar to Up for me, There's a scene in Up where Carl finally makes it to Paradise Falls, and the house is all desaturated in color, and he's not very happy that he made it, but he finally made his goal, and he thought that would make Ellie happy. Obviously she's dead, but in spirit. But he looks at her old scrapbook, and he goes to this end of the things I want to do, and he always skipped past that. He never read that because he was just too sad to. He just couldn't bear it. But then once he's about to close it, he sees that there's a picture in there, and he ends up seeing it, and it's all these pictures of them getting married, growing old, all these great memories they had. And she wrote like, "Thanks for the adventures" or something. Now go have your own. And it's a very sweet, heartwarming moment when Carl realizes, the Paradise Falls wasn't the goal. Paradise Falls wasn't the adventure. It wasn't the excitement. It wasn't what meant anything. It meant nothing. What meant something was the life they had together, which is a very sweet, heartwarming moment. And I think they could have had something similar to that in Lightyear, where Buzz could be asking, could realize that maybe, what he did, even though it was a mistake, even though it was a failure, from that failure can birth good things. And Buzz's hard-headedness to try and get this stupid fuel is jeopardizing that. He kind of learns that with old Buzz, but it's very much passed along. It's very much pushed. I think this film pushes that ethical dilemma pretty quickly and introduces old Buzz way too fast. Sorry this is all scatterbrained. I know I shouldn't apologize. This is like a very scatterbrained review. I didn't write anything down. I'm just kind of going at this kind of raw. But I think that's what I do best. I don't really like to make lists of things. I just like to think of things and just talk about them. But yeah, I mean, it's I would have liked to have seen a deeper exploration of those themes, rather than just a kind of generic kind of space movie where they learn kind of very basic generic ideas. Like, mistakes are what you learn from, and no matter if it's your mistake or someone else's mistake, you should always be there for them, and selflessness and just kind of basic themes that are important. I'm sure kids would enjoy this film. I'm just saying, as an adult, I think there's been some Pixar films that have done this kind of stuff better, explored more interesting themes in a way that kids and adults can, have both of them have an enriching experience. Up is probably the biggest example I could have, but there are other ones. Wall-E has like 80 different messages in it about consumerism, about environmentalism, and about romance, about how Wall-E is this type of kind of dipshit but that's endearing. And how Eve learns of Wally's kind of world, that scene where they're in Wally's little hangar and she's learning all this stuff is a really heartwarming scene, and kind of encapsulates a lot of romances. But I absolutely love that. There's a lot of other films, but those are a lot of films that have actually interesting tales Toy Story has a good tale of acceptance and discovering who you are, and accepting that. Not thinking you have to be something greater. And Lightyear I think the most interesting theme in Lightyear is the idea that the granddaughter of Hawthorne well, maybe I should explain this a little more. I haven't even talked about it. So eventually he keeps doing these, and then he eventually has been gone for like 20 years, and he comes back, and the granddaughter of Hawthorne is now kind of is now in her 20s or late 20s, and she kind of assembles this crack team, which is kind of made up of misfits, into this kind of squad that wants to help Buzz eventually get this fuel, but they're dipshits, and the what's the guy's name? The main dude who's now in charge of the little settlement doesn't approve of any of that, so they kind of have to go under his nose a little bit. And then there's this big ship that's like battling with robots, but it all turns out just to be Buzz trying to get it's kind of just it's not convoluted, but it's just kind of dumb, and I feel like a lot of the action is kind of like it doesn't help that going to Top Gun, I feel like the sound in this film is a little, when they're doing the spaceships, it doesn't feel like Buzz is really struggling in hyperspace. It doesn't feel like he's having that like internal like body shaking and everything's starting to fall apart. It doesn't feel like that because the sound is kind of a little one note. But that's just kind of a little complaint. In terms of animation, it's a Pixar film. Of course, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be a nice, well animated film. It's perfectly beautiful. But anyways, let me get back to what I was talking about, because I didn't just the most interesting character in this, and the most interesting theme is the theme of like generational baggage, right? Like where Hawthorne thinks she has to be this great leader because she's the granddaughter of this person who was a great leader. And I think that's a nice message to have. I think some films in the Pixar lineup have done that a little more interestingly, namely Coco. I think Coco's done. I mean, Coco's it's a little different. It's more about the pressures your family puts on you themselves. Not that they're necessarily these big celebrity figures, but they put these pressures on yourself, and you just kind of want to be who you are. You don't want to be who they want you to be. You want to grow into your own person. And it does that very, very effectively because it is the driving force. Coco's desire to find the musician is the driving force in all of his endeavors, in his entire journey. And he thought it was this grandfather that he idolized, and that he was a giant celebrity, and eventually, or great grandfather, I think. But if it actually wasn't him, it was the dipshit Hector that he was palling around with. But that was that was a much more fulfilling reveal, because he's already bonded with Hector. Hector is a good person, we learn, and he's more closer to what we think Coco would be. More selfless, more thoughtful, more oriented towards good. It's a relatively simple story, but it's a story that has important turning points and important aspects to it that make it relatable and applicable to people, to anybody. It's a similar thing with Lightyear. I don't know. I just feel like Lightyear didn't do it as well. That kind of generational, be your own person, don't compare yourself to your family kind of message. But other than that, man, I don't really want to make this review too long. I know I kind of went through a lot, or a little, but the last half of it goes on too long. I think or Buzz rather, old Buzz. I think that reveal is kind of half-hearted. It also ruins the chronology or the lore or whatever the word I'm looking for is of the original Toy Story films, right? It's the evil Emperor Zurg. Meanwhile, Zurg that from this film is actually Buzz, and I think that's a weird thing that they tried to do when they made it. You know, they in 1995, Andy saw a film that made him want to buy Buzz Lightyear. This is that film, and you're like, okay, yeah, sure. I get that they have to take creative liberties, and that's fine, but you know, I don't. That's whatever. It really doesn't bother me that much, but it does a little bit. But only as kind of not really. I think it's a little bigger than a nitpick if you're connecting this to Toy Story. But if you don't really give a shit and see this as its own thing like I do, it doesn't matter all too much. But you know, I think the final act went on way too long. There were too many parts where old Buzz / Zurg, fought. You know, kept getting the upper hand, and it just kept going and going and going, and you're like, when is this movie gonna be over? Because everyone had learned their lesson, but one more thing I want to address quickly here is the humor. I think the humor felt really flat in this movie. I think there was a few funny jokes with the cat character, some of which were blown in the trailer. There was one joke that was could have been a really funny joke, but was the dumbest joke of all time because of how much they hype it up, if that makes sense. So Taika Waititi's character has a pen in the suit, and he's fascinated about why his suit has a pen. And then he keeps going, you know, they keep showing him talking about the pen or pushing in the pen, playing with the pen, messing around with it, and you're like, okay, this pen's gonna save the day eventually. And it does. The old lady needs something small and kind of like a screwdriver to wedge this thing that's kind of closed shut. And he's like, oh my god, the pen. It's fine. I mean, that was a fine. I mean, but I mean, I think they went for that the joke was so obvious, that's why it's funny. But it just kind of seemed to fall flat. Unless if they weren't going for a kind of meta, kind of obvious joke like that, I'd be a little more weirded out. But anyways. But other than that, the humor, it was constant. It felt like it was just trying more and more and more, and it's just it fell flat. And it wasn't endearing humor. It was just obvious. I don't want to say it was Marvel quippy humor, but it was just obvious that they were just trying to make this thing flow fast, and the humor kind of make the characters more likable, but they just don't. It makes me, when I think of when humor happens like that, it makes me think of the writers in the writing room writing it, which I don't like. It doesn't make me feel like these people are people. It makes me think of the creators, which is something you shouldn't do, unless it's like a stylistic thing. You know, if it's like a Scorsese movie and you see these wild camera shots, wildly long camera pans and whatnot, you know, that's when it's okay to go, oh, this is Scorsese, or see crazy violence and be like, oh, that's Quentin Tarantino. But you know, in terms of writing, you shouldn't really be thinking like that until after the film. But during the film, I was certainly thinking of the creators of the film. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. I'm trying to think of other things to talk about, but you know, I think it was a exceedingly mid-tier Pixar film. Sorry about that. I think it was, if I had to give it a rating, I'd probably give it a, I don't know, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10. I think my ratings would probably be lower than you're thinking. Like, just generally, like a mid-tier movie is a 5 out of 10 for me, right? So I think it's a little better than that. I think the animation drives it up. I think the music was pretty good. I think the acting was, I had no issues with the acting. I think it's all pretty much okay. So I'd probably give it a 6 or a 7. I'm leaning more towards a 6. But if they maybe played a little more with the theme of Buzz aging and everyone else growing around him, and the idea that you should live in the moment and not always be looking towards something, that you not always be relentlessly pursuing this goal that might not be what you want, is a much more interesting concept for a film. Instead, they don't address that at the end. They just kind of like, oh, we're bringing back the Space Ranger program. You want to be a Space Ranger? And Buzz is like, yeah. They don't really have any dilemma about getting out of there. They kind of seem to just like, okay, we're fine now. We're all fine here. How are you? Sorry, that was Star Wars. But I don't know. Anyways, that's all I have to say. There's a lot more that I didn't really necessarily talk about. This isn't meant to be like this in-depth review, the hour-long review. This is just meant to be like, I'm just thinking in my head right now. Oh, there's that whole section where, the Hawthorne. Well, all of it really. Anyways, I don't care. This movie was so okay. Anyways, that's my whole thought process on it. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about I think I'm going to do an episode tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about, hopefully, the console wars. I want to discuss the console wars with you, because the console wars are kind of dead, but is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What is the state of consoles now? Because I got thinking about that. And then Wednesday we'll be talking about Kenobi, the full series. I'm not going to do Disney Plus reviews unless like the full series has come out. I doing episode by episode, I feel like is not smart to do, because your perspective on the episode kind of changes as new episodes come out, because maybe that new episode is something you actually wanted, but you kind of needed that build up to get there. So I'm just going to be talking about Kenobi on Wednesday. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. I'd love to hear everybody in the comments talking about this film. I want to hear exactly what people are thinking, because I don't know what people are thinking. I don't know if people really like it. I don't know if people hate it. I just don't know how the normal viewing audience is feeling about it. Also, if you have kids, tell me about it, because I would love to hear what kids are saying about this. That's a very interesting perspective that I want on this film, because these films are made for kids, but then again, Pixar films are notorious for being also made for adults. Even though the message is applicable for kids, I'm gonna make a big video about this, because I think I want to do a kind of Wall-E kind of retrospective, because that film has such an impact on me. But that scene, that first scene from Up, is something that affects you as a kid. You go, oh, that's really sad. But once you grow up and you have like parents that are that age, or getting to that age, or you see grandparents too, could be applicable, and have had that happen. Like, a lot of people have had stuff like that happen. So we'll see. But as you grow into that, it affects you more, is what I'm trying to say. Sorry. It affects you more. It adds a new layer of meaning, which also makes that scene where he's looking through the book add a new layer of meaning and perspective, that makes you think about your own life, rather than just this fictional character. But yeah, anyways, that's all I have to say. Thank you. I'll see you for the next one, which will be tomorrow. I think we'll see. We'll see if I am able to get one out. But yeah, Godspeed. Have a great day. Whatever you're doing, make the most of it. And always be thinking. Don't never know. Actually, just shut your brain off. Who cares? No one's gonna really give a shit. Everyone does it. So.